guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bianca and thank you so much for tuning into today's video. So today I'm going to be talking you through and showing you a couple demos of my favourite personal makeup tips and hacks. So these are things that I personally use all the time. I don't find that they're just like hyped up or something that's just used for clickbait and stuff like that. Obviously, as you can see by my thumbnail, that I was taking the piss, but all of this stuff is completely real and stuff that I use day to day. So if you're interested in seeing my tips and tricks when applying makeup, then please keep on watching. So my first trick is always applying lip balm or some kind of moisturizer on your lips before starting your makeup routine, just because I find this gives the most amount of time for your lips to become moisturized and plump before you put on any kind of lip product. Because when you're putting on something, for example, like a matte liquid lipstick, you don't want to be putting this straight onto freshly applied lip balm, because I find that it just doesn't stay on very well. It'll dry out, it'll crack up. And you think that if you're applying something moisturizing underneath straight away that it would stay moisturized, but unfortunately I find personally that it has the opposite effect. So I would prefer to put on lip balm way in advance. Like, it usually takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to do a full face of makeup, so it's got that amount of time to really sink into the lips. And I find if I do have any excess, I'll just like dab it off, but my lips will still stay tacky and plump, and then it'll give the best possible result for any kind of lipstick that you want to put on top at the end. So my next tip when applying any kind of base or foundation is to take note of what products you use and if you think they're going to match up well. You can have a million different types of products and they can all be really good, but if you apply them together and they don't match up well, your makeup may end up looking really crappy. So like, I've got like really good high quality products, but they just don't go with some other really good high quality products. So you just have to really find good matches, and it's a very much trial and error thing, but once you know what goes well together, you'll find that your makeup starts lasting longer, looking nicer, and overall will just be a much more seamless application. I'll give you a couple of examples that work for me personally. So when I'm using something like the matte Fenty Beauty foundation, it can be quite dry. I find what works really well is using oil products underneath. So I use things like my Innoxia Hydrating Primer. This has things like avocado oil and stuff like that in it. So it is a pretty oily primer. If you do have oily skin, then obviously stay away. Most of this kind of stuff is for dry skin, because I have dry skin, so these are the tips that I'm giving you. But using this with this works really well. If you're working with an oil-based foundation, something like the Tarte Rainforest of the Sea, because it is water-based, you don't want to be mixing any oils underneath. You want to go with something like the designer brand's moisturizing primer, because you're still getting moisture and your face is still going to look dewy, but I don't think this has any oil in it, and if it does, it never disrupts any water-based foundations that I use, and I find it still leaves me looking dewy and moisturized, and it doesn't break up on my skin. Also, something to keep in mind is moisturizer. So I always recommend making sure I wash my face before even applying any kind of makeup, and I mean that, I'm sure that goes without saying for a lot of people, but up until a couple of months ago, if I was waking up in the morning and I was just putting makeup straight on my face without washing it, and I found that since I started cleansing my face in the morning, and I've gotten a lot better results, and my makeup has lasted a lot longer, and my skin overall has been a lot better, and I've had a lot less breakouts, a lot less eczema, a lot less dry spots, so that has really helped with that. And also keeping in mind what moisturizer you're using. So if you have really dry skin, you might be using something that is oil based, and that could also affect how your foundation looks over the top. So if you've got a water based foundation, you don't want to be using an oil based moisturizer. Even if you're going to be using something that is oil-free as a primer, it's still going to disrupt it because it's still sitting on your skin. I always use, I don't really change this up based on what kind of foundation I use, but I find because it is oil-free, it works with everything. I have mentioned this before, it is the Aesop Hydrating Serum. It is oil-free, but it keeps my skin really, really hydrated. And of course I use a primer on top of that, so I'm getting extra layers of hydration. Okay, so my next little hack and tip for you is for brow pomade. So ever since I've done makeup, I've always used the Anastasia Dipbrow, but a lot of people, and you might know if you use this, it dries up really, really quickly. Luckily I go through it quite quickly, so I don't get too much of this, but when it does start to dry out, I put a couple of eye drops in it. I've heard people can also use oils, but I'm just not sure how that would disrupt the formula. I find that when I use eye drops, it just does a really good job. It smooths it out. It's like it's new. It goes on really smooth and doesn't crumble. This is another really good tip. If you find that you are throwing it out because it's dried out, do not throw it out. Use eye drops. Anything else that has dried out that is similar to this, just use eye drops and it's good as new. My next tip is to do with doing your eyebrows as well. So my eyebrows, they look pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. But that's only because I carve out my brows. So out of everything that I do when it comes to makeup, my eyebrows takes by far the longest, just because I'm really precise and really pedantic when it comes to getting the exact shape that I want. So when I carve them out, I use just a flat, I think just like an eyeliner brush, but it's completely flat brush. And then like a thick concealer, so my Shape Tape concealer or any other kind of concealer that you want to use, I just suggest using something that's more on the thicker side. If you get a thinner kind of concealer, it might seep into the brows and then you'll have to touch it up and it could be a little bit messy. So if you get a thicker one, it holds its shape a lot easier and it's easier to mold around the brows, and then you get a seamless finish. My next tip is to do all your eyeshadows and all that kind of stuff before doing your face. So it's so funny, I used to make fun of people that did this just because I was like, how the hell do you get foundation around eyeliner and stuff like that? It does take a little bit of practice. You have to be pretty precise and stuff like that. But ever since I started doing it, I find that my face looks so much better throughout the day. I don't see like little flecks of like eyeshadow and stuff like that falling down. Or you have eyeshadows that have a lot of fallout, or if you're using glitter, if you're doing eyeliner and you fuck it up and you don't want to have to take off your foundation to have to redo it, I really suggest doing your eyes first, especially if it's a complicated eye look. So my next tip is using the tape method. If you have been watching my videos before, you would have seen me do this. So it's just placing a piece of tape against your eyes so that you can achieve a really precise eyeshadow or eyeliner look. If you are a beginner with doing winged eyeliner, then I highly suggest doing this, because I mean, I'm not the greatest at eyeliner. You can probably see by me doing this video, I have stuffed it up a few times. But honestly, it is a practice thing, but also the tape method will really help you out. Okay, my next tip is to do with something that I kind of touched on before. It is foundation. So if you do have a matte foundation that you really like, but you have dry skin, or you don't feel like having matte finish today, you can mix it in with a little bit of oil. I use the Ordinary Rosehip oil. It's my favorite and it's by far the cheapest one that I've been able to find. So I just mix that in a little bit with some matte foundation. Just like 1 drop is plenty. That stuff is so potent, you don't really want to use much, otherwise it'll separate your foundation and it just won't look very nice. Also be careful with that, as I mentioned before, you don't want to be mixing that in with any water-based foundations, because that will just separate on your face and it will become a hot mess. My next tip is, if you are applying concealer underneath your eyes, like a lot of people do, I find that when I'm applying my foundation first, I always avoid the areas where I'm going to put concealer on, especially my under eyes, just because if you're going to be putting foundation underneath your eyes and then going on with concealer over the top as well, especially if it's a thicker concealer like the Shape Tape concealer, it can become really cakey, and if it doesn't agree with the foundation, it can separate. So next tip is something that you might already know, and it's something I have talked about before, but something I thought I would just touch on, is making sure when you're applying your makeup that you use powder on powder and cream on cream. So for example, if you've got a cream blush, you want to put that straight on top of your foundation before you set it in place, otherwise it may separate or it might lift up your foundation, and vice versa. It's not very cute and most of the time it just doesn't work. So my next tip is, despite the thumbnail, I'm not using a knife to apply bronzer or contour. It's literally just pursing your lips together, like you can see, and then you can see it creates some kind of a line, and you can match it up to where your contour should be on your face. I don't really know how to explain that, but as you can see from the demo, that's how I do it, and I find I get the perfect line every time. You do not need any household utensils. And my last tip for you guys today is something that I also have talked about before, but I thought I'd touch on again, is using setting spray before applying mascara or highlight. So for mascara, I do this just because I find I do have quite big eyes and I have quite long eyelashes that my mascara always transfers when I use setting spray after I've done mascara. If you put highlight on and then setting spray over the top, it'll actually dim down the highlight. So if you do want a blinding highlight, I suggest doing that over the top of setting spray, because then you'll get the most blinding highlight possible. So those are all my tips for you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed filming it. If you want to see another video like this in the future, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!